really tried to do it when they're $200, and then I just couldn't figure it out. I tried it all over town. This guy, anyway, but it's fine. But it's interesting, like something like that, which will actually change your life and make your life better and bring actual happiness. And there's like hundreds of YouTube people. BlackRock is now an ETF, a Bitcoin ETF. There's like Deutsche Bank. All the world banks now are buying Bitcoins, and they're just, they're just digital ideas. There's nothing solid about it at all. It's just amazing what people spend their time on. I mean, I unfortunately look into it too, because it's.
Well, a lot of people have a vested interest in doing it because they can do a lot of nefarious things with that money.
It's actually pretty tough to do it because it's all tracked. All the wallets are known. That's what's neat about blockchain, is because it's there's no lying involved. It's just like when you set something up, it's almost impossible to. I mean, the people where the money goes, where it comes from, the wallet it comes out of is known. Where it goes is where it is known. And the thing is, the person who owns the wallet is known. So the thing is, though, if if you transfer $1 billion in Bitcoin to a weapons dealer, they'll know where it went to, and if they cash it in, they'll know. It's only that's why the FBI is catching everybody. So, but the individual, like you can, like for instance, I could take all my wealth, put it into Bitcoin. I could buy the $10 worth, and then run out of the country. But then I'd be able to get $10 worth of rupees if I was in India, just pretty easily.
Right.
So that's really cool.
Okay.
A lot of rupees.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Keen, is the cost of living roughly the same? Like, is $5 get you a coffee? I mean, 5 rupees get you a
I
coffee?
mean, rupees like they're dollars, so it buys whatever a dollar gets you.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just so impressed. I've never really, even when I was a rich kid, I never felt like rich, because there was always like really rich people around. I have a friend of mine who's literally making $10,000 a month with Dave and the trust fund. He felt like he was broke all the time. Now, if someone gave me $10,000 a month, I would sponsor everyone in this room.
We had a friend at the Zen Center who was, would come to you. She was always, low, having kind of some sort of financial crisis. And so, we'd help out. And then you find out that she had more money than we did. It's just at what level does your panic trigger?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a rupee goes farther than a dollar, because like on the train, it was only 20 cents for a cup of tea, which, whatever their cents is, I don't even know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
So you cannot get a cup of tea for 20 cents
So
here.
literally, you could walk into India with like 10 grand. You could possibly, especially if you spoke Hindi, never work again, or at least like 5 years of opulence.
Okay. Let us start.
Thank you, Frank.
Yep. There we go. Working. Okay. Welcome, Zoomers. Here we are. Going slowly through this, which is good because it's rather heady. The Tibetan Book of the Dead itself, but what a resource. I mean, it's just amazing. I had something with a neighbor this week where, her father had died. And then her mother's not doing well. And so suddenly to, a nursing home and a hospice, I guess, even. And she just kind of fell apart. It's like she had never thought about, I can't remember what she said to me, but it was something that was very, very revealing that I didn't know this was going to happen. It was something like that. And so we often kind of discount, really the tremendous benefit of just hearing the Buddhist teachings. Because when the Buddha says, impermanence is like the footprint of the elephant, it's like the heaviest, the most important teaching. We live with it all the time. It's every sadhana, it's every teaching, it's up again and again and again. And so slowly, we sort of have an awareness of it anyway. And it's really good because it's really amazing how we can live in our bubbles. And then suddenly that bubble pops and there's big time suffering. Whereas the Tibetan Book of the Dead, for instance, is about getting ready for the moment of death and what can be done. So he's starting out, the Dalai Lama, in his commentary on it, obviously with the basic Buddhist teachings on the first turning of the wheel, the teachings at Sarnath so many hundreds of years ago, even thousands. This a radical analysis of the body and mind, then articulated into the 5 skandhas, the fine heaps. What are we? We're these 5 heaps. But there's no self there. And the other principles that are universal is that they're all dissatisfactory and they're all impermanent. So with that fundamental understanding, then you start to look, what is there? So if you think of it, it's a tremendous existential question. If you can accept, at least give any kind of credence or even the possibility of it to the Buddha's basic teachings on the skandhas and the no self nature, then what is it? Who is this that's it's aware of all of this stuff? I mean, really, what is going on? So this is the beginning, but it's also permeated throughout the whole Buddha Dharma. And all of its teachings are just different methods of understanding what's the truth behind that statement. Then, what did he say next? He was just expanding on it, basically, but then he started talking about the continuity of the mind. Now he's going to have more to say on that. But that's particularly kind of a difficult one for most of us, although historically, it probably wasn't difficult for any society, but for our modern, since the scientific revolution, there's been such a focus on, observable phenomenon. And it's produced so much. I mean, square miles of asphalt and, mountains worth of medicine and the benefits of modern medicine. That sometimes I think about dental pain. I just can't imagine what it must have been like before, certainly antibiotics, but even more so the pain reducing meds that we have. I mean, I just don't know how people did it, truly. But nonetheless, he's talking about the Buddhist view on the continuity of consciousness, how one moment triggers another, and there's this stream that doesn't stop at death. But again, this is hard for us usually with a modern scientific education and the conditioning that we've had. It's very, very hard to have a natural kind of faith in that. Some people do. That's a good thing. But the discussion, when you get into the depths of cause and effect and the actual nature of the mind, starts seeming not so far out. But nonetheless, that's where we've gone so far. So we're on page XX 22 in the introductory commentary, Dalai Lama's commentary to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And now he's going to start to get into the tantric teachings and the kind of theory behind it, so to speak. So I'm at the top of first full paragraph on XX. And now, as to the nature of the actual preparation itself, that's for death, this will depend on each individual's depth of spiritual aspiration. For example, if an individual is simply seeking a favorable rebirth as a human being, there's no need to engage in sophisticated meditative path related to the processes of death and rebirth. Simply to live a virtuous life is seen as sufficient. Similarly, in the case of those who are seeking personal liberation from conditioned existence, and also in the case of those whose practice is confined to the sutric level of the Mahayana path, their meditative preparation will be limited to ensuring the attainment of successive forms of existence that will be conducive to the continuation of their journey towards enlightenment. So these are the teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni practiced for 3 eons, purifying the mind, accumulating merit, until all that ripened in his final lifetime. this sort of path towards and higher and higher and higher, or you might say deeper and deeper and deeper, but towards the perfection of giving, the perfection of ethics, the perfection of patience, the perfection of joyous effort, the perfection of meditative concentration, and the perfection of wisdom. So the perfection of realizations. For these three kinds of individuals, no actual techniques for utilizing the time of death as an essential element of the spiritual path have been set down in classical Buddhist literature. Nevertheless, since an understanding of the processes of death, the intermediate state, and rebirth are crucial to our understanding of the nature of existence, we do find extensive discussion of these three processes, even in the texts which relate to the aspirations of these three kinds of persons. So again, the three kinds, what? People wanting a better birth, people wanting to be liberated from their own suffering, and then people on the Mahayana path, the sutric, the conventional or the deceptive path it's called, leading to Buddhahood. There's no need really there to discuss these extraordinary teachings useful at the moment of death, but nonetheless, since they are essential to understanding the nature of the mind, they're in the teachings also. But it is exclusively in Tantra, in particular, however, and particularly in highest Yoga Tantra, that the methods for utilizing the processes of death, the intermediate state, that's the Bardo, and rebirth are specifically taught as the basis for achieving liberation from cyclic existence. So exclusively in Tantra. Let me think the meaning of Tantra again. Khenpo told me, and my old mind is forgetting, mantra is anyone remember? Mantra is protection of the mind, protection of the mind. And Tantra, I believe, is protection of the body. Yeah, I think that's right. And you would think maybe it should be protection of the mind, but this is what's so special about the Tantra, that it's actually using, our actual body. People come to Tibetan Buddhists sometimes, and I think often, and you have your first empowerment or soak offering or something, and there's some traditional Tibetan Lama, and then he's giving out, these substances, and people don't know what's going on. It just seems so foreign, because they teach that there's liberation by sight, liberation by hearing, liberation by touch, liberation by, what are the other senses? Taste. Liberation by taste, that's what this is. And liberation by smell, exactly. And of course, liberation by mind too, but protection of the body. So these are incredibly protective and valuable practices. And I think many Tibetans, for instance, although they may not be educated or trained, like he's going to tell us here in highest Yoga Tantra, still they have that understanding. This is protection of the body. So though there may not be understanding, they still have a faith and will engage in practices because they believe that it's protecting them and their families. Specifically taught as the basis for achieving liberation from cyclic existence, these methods involve the development of a skillful relationship with certain experiential stages that an individual actually induces with the intention of enhancing spiritual realization and the fruition of their capacities as a human being. So really all of Dharma is, it's this radical understanding, which in a sense is not radical, it's really simple. We spend our whole lives trying to eliminate suffering by changing outer existence. And although everywhere we see that doesn't work, or if it works, it's only in a temporary way. So for instance, what we call happiness, for instance, is really just a momentary and temporary reduction in suffering. It's not really happiness with a capital H. So you're hungry and you eat, right? So the suffering of your stomach pangs is reduced. But if eating itself were true happiness, then you could just continue eating and you'd be happier and happier and happier. But there's Homer Simpson and a donut, Keynes says. So you see, it's just temporary, it's temporary little relief. But that's not to say that in our life we don't have clear moments of our nature. But it's just that they tend to be moments. So, the development of skillful relationship with certain experiential stages that an individual actually induces with the intention of enhancing spiritual realization and the fruition of their capacities as human beings. What a remarkable statement, really. You think about it, you think the level of I hate to say it, but wisdom with most what passes for a religious practice all over the world. It's in such a crude kind of level. Even the sentence is hard to, is like complex. It has so many different factors in there because he's talking about the actual doing of it rather than just a simple faith. Nothing wrong with a simple faith. But I know it's very interesting to me in the, when I talk to different people in that, that it's such a sort of an elemental kind of level. It's just kind of a simple kind of faith in whatever their particular belief system is. And that, that's, again, that could be a good thing, nothing wrong. But what stands out with Buddha's path is the incredible level of practical experience and method. Back to the Dalai Lama. So generally speaking, the practices of highest Yoga Tantra present a spiritual path which enables the individual to attain complete Buddhahood within a single lifetime prior to the moment of death. Yet for those who are unable to achieve this, it becomes crucial to use the transformative opportunities offered by the naturally occurring processes of death, the process of the intermediate state, and the processes of rebirth. Hence, in highest Yoga Tantra, it is not merely the preparation for a more developed future rebirth which is important, but of more fundamental significance is the personal preparation for using one's own death and subsequent states as a means of achieving liberation. So it's said that this is actually the opportune moment. And why? The Tibetans say the mind is 19 times more powerful in the Bardo than it is right now. Because our distraction of habit, our simple biological evolution, we're just focused on these gross things. It's just the state that we're in, but we have still this profound mind. And when our attachments are dissolved away because the body's not there anymore, you can't get distracted by your hangnail. You can't get distracted by your dyspepsia. You can't get distracted by your heartburn or your headache or whatever it is. That's gone. So they say 19 times more powerful. I love the fact that it seems so quasi-mathematical. Not 20, right? 19.5. In the literature of highest Yoga Tantra, as I have mentioned, the three realms of conditioned existence into which a human being may be born are described in terms of differing expressions or modalities of energy, lung. And it is said that our fundamental ignorance is the root of conditioned existence, and that karmic energy is its activating force. So again, three realms. And you've heard me say this is the realm of desire, which is really what we're talking about most of the time. We're found, human realm is in the realm of desire. The realm of desire is divided into 6 realms also, they say. But the realm of desire, then above that, the realm of subtle form, which are higher God states. and then finally the realm, the formless realm, the four stations of Brahma. Very, very subtle existences. But again, our fundamental ignorance, our fundamental not knowing, is the root of conditioned existence. The karmic energy is the activating force. Further, from the tantric perspective, death, the intermediate state, and rebirth are also seen as nothing other than differing modalities of karmic energy. The point at which the gross levels of energy are completely dissolved and only the subtle energies remain is death. So there you go. Gross levels of energy are completely dissolved and only the subtle energies remain is death. We have right now these subtle energies within us. These subtle minds, you might call them, the subtle winds, the lungs, the prana, but they're covered over. And we can see this in a gross way, even in our daily life, how we're going along and everything's calm, everything's fine, just doing what we do. And then all of a sudden there's something that triggers our anger. The anger just completely covers over that peaceful mind state. It's not like that nature of the mind goes away, but it's just like totally colonized, you might say. I mean, all we're aware of is the anger with this limited kind of understanding. So too right now, our gross minds are covering over our subtle minds. We're not even aware of them. The stage at which these energies unfold into a more manifested form is the intermediate state. So that's called the bardo. Bardo means gap. What is the gap? There are many gaps. They talk about 6 different bardos, 6 different gaps, but this one is another name for it. I can't remember a particular bardo, one of these 6, what normally is just called the bardo for shorthands, is the gap between death and rebirth. So at death, all these energies are gone. I mean, the gross energies just dissolve. The subtle energies are there, very easy to miss them because we don't have the habit of experiencing our subtle energies right now. We haven't trained in that way. So it's like a surprise. But then they start to manifest because that's our karma. That's what they do. It's just this natural, cycle, you might say, this natural development. And so the first manifestation of these subtle energies is like a dream. It's the bardo. All these bardo, Sidpa bardo, I can't remember, it doesn't matter. The stage at which these energies unfold into a more manifest form is the intermediate stage, and the stage at which they eventually manifest substantially is called rebirth. So we're on this process of this outer getting harder, grosser and grosser and grosser, more and more manifest like that. So for instance, in some of the visualizations, the more detailed visualizations of a mandala, you'll find yourself as a Buddha, and above you, increasing as you go out from the mandala, increasing substantiality, you might say. So above, first you're above you can have a whole realm of like wrathful beings who are in a realm of like wind, like a hurricane, just the element of air. But then the next step out, it's fire, just a little bit more substantial. And then the next realm out, completely encased in like a tsunami of water, more substantial than the fire. And then above that, like Mount Meru's, these mountains, because the farther we go out, the farther, the more substantial it is in our understanding, in our experience. The stage at which these energies unfold, I read that, rebirth. Thus, all 3 states, death, intermediate state, bardo, and rebirth, are differing manifestations of energy, of lung. To me, this kind of resonates, easier for us to maybe believe these days because of, ever since, Einstein and the quantum revolution after him, We understand that we're basically empty space right now. It just seems so solid, but we know it's not. I can't remember what the proportions are, but someone told me if the nucleus of an atom were like a ping pong ball, that the electron going around the hydrogen atom would be, I can't remember what, like, the distance to Mars or something just amazing. We're just basically empty space, but not experienced that way, of course. So all three states are differing manifestations of energy, lung, prana. Based on this understanding, since death is the state when all the gross levels of energy and consciousness have been dissolved, and only the subtle energies and consciousnesses remain, it is possible for an advanced yogin to meditatively induce a state which is almost identical to the actual experience of death. Let me stop here for a second. So we're starting to get into, you might say, like the theory of the Tantra. When we visualize ourselves, we're going through this process. We're going through this whole process of birth, life, death, dissolution. We're doing that. We know that in Buddhism it's taught, yes, there's rebirth. We die and then we take another birth, and this keeps going, die, keeps going like that. But it's also happening from moment to moment. One reason it's hard to believe in rebirth is because we have this idea that somehow I was here a moment ago, and there's something solid there, this self, something there that isn't subject to change, and that is a continuity, like in form. But the Buddhist teachings is that we're dying every instant and being reborn. And so when you start to get a sense of that, you see we're already doing rebirth right now. It's just like on a gross level that it's happening, when the body itself dies. But nonetheless, because this is actually the nature of things as they are, it means that we're actually capable of inducing that right now. It's not something a million miles away, like we're trying to get to heaven or something. But it's here right now, because we're talking about the nature of the mind. And obviously our mind hasn't gone anywhere. So, it is possible for an advanced yogin to meditatively induce a state which is almost identical to the actual experience of death. This can be achieved because it is possible to meditatively bring about the dissolution of the gross levels of energy and consciousness. All of the Tantra is this, yeah. And Poa would be one of them, yeah. When such a task is accomplished, the meditator gains an enormous potential to progress definitively on his or her spiritual practice. For at the stage when the experience of fundamental inner radiance is genuinely affected through such a method, the yogin gains the capacity to actualize the illusory body of the meditational deity, thus ensuring the realization of perfect Buddhahood in this lifetime. So think about this. What are they saying? Well, our Buddha nature, ultimately you say in Dharmakaya, the body of truth, the truth body, there's nothing that can be said about it. There's nothing to grasp onto. There's no conceptuality there. It's just the image they use is that it's vast like space. But out of that limitless space manifests these tremendous, fantastic cumulus clouds. These are all the Dhyani Buddhas, all the meditation Buddhas. So you're dealing just with the mind itself, but obviously on a very subtle level. Because we're looking around right now, we don't see those Dhyani Buddhas. And yet we have faith that in the practice of these great practitioners who preceded us, that they were able to see those Buddhas. So it means that you can actually, because it's your own subtle energy that you're trying to, and you can see that if you can manifest that, you are just like this sliver away from the Dharmakaya. Actually, you're not away from the Dharmakaya at all, but your understanding is such that it's so subtle that you're still able to see form, but in this very, very subtle way. So this is what's going on when we try to visualize ourselves, the generation stage of the highest Tantra. We're working in this way and we're training our mind and even doing it. And of course, it can seem like, oh, this is just pretend or something. But it's no different than giving a basketball to a fourth grader, say, here, why don't you dribble? And their dribbling is hi. You looking for AA? Wait for Steffi to come back. We just had someone walk into the room looking for the wrong place.
Frank, scientifically, they basically say it's like the molecules were made out of the solidity of this. It's 99.9997% space. It's like walking into a gymnasium.
Uh-huh.
And the solid matter that is actually touchable. It's like a couple flies.
Oh, in a gymnasium. That's wonderful. Yeah.
It's pretty profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the space is reminded me of the fact that it's like Mars. Yeah, so it's interesting. That's one of the first things I did with one of the teachers I had a long time ago. Where is the solidity of this? Where is it coming from?
Yeah.
And eventually, I'll just give it away.
Yeah.
It's your own mind.
Well, I may be wrong about the Mars. I can't remember which one it was.
Something like that.
It's something amazing, though. Yeah.
It's vast.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably vast. Yeah.
See if Steffi's coming
It's
back.
nothing like what you imagine.
Like Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
It's more than that. All right, we'll keep going for Steffi. Okay, so
Frank, one question.
yeah,
The Tigleys are the mind? The Tigleys are the mind?
Tigleys are the drops
Oh, okay.
that move. Yeah, yeah,
Winds, channels, and drops.
yeah,
Winds, channels, and drops.
yep. The illusory body of the meditational deity. So that's one of the gaps. When you talk about the 6 gaps, for instance, is the gap between birth and death. And that's where you can practice I believe it's the illusory body. That's what Milarepa practiced. There's the gap of the moment of death. There's the gap of the Siddha Bardo between the Bardo body there. There is the moment of death, Poa. There's dream yoga, so there's a dream body. These are all illusory bodies. And so interesting, when they talk about the illusory body here, it kind of covers them all. These bodies that are the manifestation of our subtle minds, subtle bodies. Okay. That's the meditational body. So when you're visualizing yourself as Tara, they call it the illusory body. Why? Because other people don't see it. They just see the gross body. You're having this body, you have the illusion of being Tara. Yeah. That's all right. Yeah, no, this is very heady stuff, and you can see this is not like Sunday school. Most Tibetans don't know this, but they just, it's, but what they have is this faith in it. So it's just like, right. And also they have these great figures. I mean, I think of my own daughters, to tell you the truth. They grew up and they had these, wonderful people staying in our house. They didn't have any idea of, what their qualifications were, or Buddhism versus Christianity versus atheism. They didn't have any of that. They just had the experience of these people that were just being 100% human being, kind, decent, but not phony kind in their nature.
Like Bill Cosby said, Harvard grad, your first job, you're going to be serving coffee. That's
Yeah, right. So Steffi, is he okay? Okay. Is he still here? Yeah. We didn't have any coffee? No, not if we don't have it already. Yeah, it's all right. He can go down. Okay. AA will have coffee for him if he needs, but that's all right. Oh, he's probably keeping warm. Okay. Yeah, there isn't a meeting today, he said, for AA.
He was hoping for it.
Okay. Okay. This achievement of perfect Buddhahood. So when you attain this illusory body, you know, it's your subtle energies, minds manifesting in this way. And remarkably, it can be done in this lifetime, so to speak, in one lifetime. This achievement of perfect Buddhahood entails the actualization of the three dimensions or bodies of a Buddha, the Trikaya. These fruitional bodies are related both to our ultimate natural state and to the emanational qualities of full enlightenment. So this is something too, because think of this. You know, we have such a selfish view of everything that we think of enlightenment as something like, well, I'm just out of here, you know? But this is the genius of the Mahayana teachings, is that this development of wisdom has this natural kind of radiance. And we see that in the nimbus around the Buddha figures. You know, the halo in Christian art is believed to have come from India and from the Buddhists way back. So this expression of, you know, it's not just some sort of passivity, some being away and resolving in wisdom, which was sort of the idea, I think, in India at the Buddha's time. That's why he was so radical. Because again, you know, our teachings of the four immeasurables, they had that. They had these teachings in his time of these four higher states of Brahma. And they thought that was the whole deal. We were trying to get there, trying to get to this state of, if I can, I always forget the four, not the four immeasurables, but the four states of Brahma. Let's see. Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. That there's space. That's right, infinite space.
And then there's no space with like no thinking or something.
Yeah, well, the last one is neither perception nor perception,
Yeah, something like
neither perception nor non-perception. And before that, I think is just a state of, did they say emptiness, but not the emptiness with a capital E. You're just like you're aware of nothing really, just the vastness of it all. And before that, again, sorry, I can't remember. Maybe I should look them up. But nonetheless, so we have these four very, very subtle, very, very high, but samsaric states. And so what did the Buddha do? He turned those into love, compassion, spontaneous joy in others' virtue, and then impartiality. So he brought it right down to earth, so to speak, because this is the non-dual teaching. It's not something that's somewhere else. Whereas this idea of wisdom, you're enlightened, you stand there and people come up and, you know, darshan or something, they touch you. I shouldn't say darshan because that's a technical term, which I don't really know the full meaning. But my point is that as far as something being completely away from this, completely away from our life, completely away from society, instead the Buddha brought it all right here, but with this vast understanding, a totally non-dual kind of achievement. So this achievement of perfect Buddhahood entails the actualization of the three dimensions or bodies of a Buddha. These fruitional bodies are related both to our ultimate natural state and to the emanational qualities of full enlightenment. Interestingly, we see exactly the same pattern of dimensions in our ordinary existence. Death is the point at which both the physical and mental fields dissolve into interradiance, and where both consciousness and energy exist at their most subtle, non-dual level, as in deep sleep. This mode in its fruitional state is the Buddha body of reality, Dharmakaya. All right, so there you go again. This dissolution into what we are, we have manifested out of this all the way to this gross form where we are. And when we die, all of those energies are dissolved further, until this sort of spark of the Dharmakaya, you might say. And it's said that that moment, the moment of awareness of that is like the snap of a finger. Although it seems to extend the more virtue that we've done. So someone who's very virtuous, there's a greater opportunity to realize the nature of the mind right there. Then, from within this essential or natural state, one enters into the intermediate state, where although there is perceptual experience, the phenomenal forms are comparatively subtle and non-substantive, as in a dream. This natural kind of progression, we don't recognize the Dharmakaya, and so the Bardo manifests. It's said, actually, in the detail in the Book of the Dead, he's not saying that right now, but it's said that these first manifestations are the peaceful Buddhas. This is interesting to me too, is that, this is like the fundamental expression of wisdom as compassion, but with compassion with a capital C. So this first manifestation are the peaceful Buddhas, these Tara, Amitabha, all these beautiful Buddhas. It's just, wonder. What does that say about our nature? Isn't that something? The fundamental thing is blissful and positive. It's just so completely different from what people think. Well, they used to think of Buddhism. Most people don't think about it at all. But when the Protestant missionaries came across Buddhism in India, and Southeast Asia, they thought it was being very negative because it was always talking about suffering, and yet they couldn't understand that the Buddhist people that you see, they're all happy. They're barefoot and happy. They didn't have all the toys that we had. Not that they can't develop toys too, but nonetheless. So this first manifestation is these beautiful, peaceful Buddhas, but we don't recognize those. And so the mind continues to manifest, to develop, going further and further. And the next are the wrathful Buddhas. You see all the wrathful Buddhas. And of course, for most people, that's terrifying. And they run away from the wrathful Buddhas. So the kind of mistake that we're all making. Vajrakalaya, Yamataka, Hevajra, Vajrayogini, all the ones who are scary,
Those are reminding us that there's compassion.
They're totally compassion. But as we get grosser and grosser, we can't see even the nature of the compassion. And so what do we need? We need someone who can sort of shock us out of our attachments.
So we just gotta run towards the brightest light and all the weirdos.
Yes, that's right.
Go towards that.
All right, that's right.
Sometimes the weird come right to it.
I'm here.
Me too.
All right, so then from within the essential or natural state, one enters into the intermediate state, where although there is perceptual experience, the phenomenal forms are comparatively subtle and non-substantive, as in a dream. This mode, in its fruitional state, is the Buddha body of perfect resource, Sambhogakaya. This is called the bliss body of the Buddha, Sambhogakaya. The Buddha body of perfect resource. Why perfect resource? Because it's kind of like genetic surgery or something. You can have just diseases that there's just nothing you can do about them. Sickle cell anemia or some of these other terrible kind of diseases. They just seem like, incalculable. You can't do anything about it. And yet there can be, I don't know if there are on these particular ones, but in related diseases where genetically, you just change some little thing, but at a very deep level, and the manifestations of that are whole and complete. So that's why when you're dealing with the subtle energies, which are more fundamental, you might say, closer to the source, you get a greater result, fruition. All right, then from this state, one assumes a grosser physical existence culminating in actual rebirth, as in our normal waking experience. This mode in its fruitional state is the Buddha body of emanation, Nirmanakaya. Thus we see a direct parallel between the three natural states of our existence and the three dimensions of a fully enlightened being. Because our nature is not somewhere else, it's accessible to us. Although our habit is completely, overwhelming it and being distracted from it. But this is the greatness you can see already in the difference between the Tantra and the Sutra. So what is The sutra, it's this path of perfections, this path on the way to perfection of wisdom, to Buddhahood. And what is the Tantra? It's the practice in the pure realms, it's pure vision. So there it's a little bit different conceptually, but instead of practicing the means of getting there, we're practicing the result of being there right now. And so this is, different in a way, but in another way not, because it is our nature. We can practice in that way. And you can sort of see it, because if you think of the Pure Land, like they say, in the Pure Land, that is when we're just immersed in pure vision, everything is conducive to enlightenment. Said that the birds are singing the Dharma, that the water ripples are singing the Dharma. Everything is conducive to practice. No obstacles in our gross manner. So that's in the Pure Land, right? We're practicing in that way in the Tantra, pure vision. But right now, in our gross method, the sutric level of practice in the Mahayana, think what happens. Some anger arises in the mind. Someone does something. And you have trained yourself to practice the antidote. So it's not practicing the pure thing itself, but instead of getting immersed in the anger, to practice patience. So in that way, all these bad things that are happening to us, all the obscurations, everything, they're all completely conducive to practice. So just like in the Pure Land, in pure vision, everything is conducive to our development. So too in the Sutric Mahayana, where everything, our difficulties become purification. But it's on a grosser level. But you can see there's no difference really, fundamental difference. Okay. Yeah.
The purification from suffering, does it ever become okay? Oh, thank God.
We got a question.
Frank, sorry about the interruption,
Yeah.
but I was just
No,
wondering.
good.
it
Questions
seems-
are good.
Oh yeah, it'll be okay. I think we all have dealt with this question. Being that the suffering is part of the path, part of the purification, is there a time where you no longer? I mean, you're always suffering, but is there a moment where you're able to just let go of the suffering and see it as? Did you ever just stop suffering?
Yeah, an arhat doesn't suffer. There's no
Oh,
more.
okay. So it's just literally the
Suffering's
right
gone.
mental state. Even if they have leprosy, they're not suffering.
Yeah, even in it's a Hindu teacher, Ramana Maharshi, but his, I think he was 16 years old, something like that. So he died in the 1960s, maybe. He, at the age of 16, for some reason, I think it was 16, maybe even younger, he laid down. Have a seat, join us. He was in his room and he was just lying down, and he suddenly just started to think, imagining what his death would be like. And he was in his bed and he went through this whole process and basically had like full enlightenment at 16 years old. And he was obviously motivated in a different way after that. And he walked to this holy mountain called Arunachala. Actually, Michelle and Ben have been there. And he spent his whole life in Arunachala. And people would come to him because he had this, spiritual wisdom. But his whole practice that he would give people is just say, who am I? That was the whole thing. Questioning, who am I? And by this one-pointed doubt, this one-pointed focus on who am I is, great kind of like shamatha meditative teaching. And with the mind was stilled, the nature arises. So that's what he does. Now I forgot what Rogo's question was. Hi. You had the question, Rogo, about whether the suffering, goes away. So he developed a cancer at the end of his life, and I can't remember. It was, it was an outer tumor, so you could see something, and he just went through this whole process, and someone was trying to push some sort of remedy on him, And he sort of cut it off or something. And he said, no, it wants to live too. Now, a modern American cannot accept this, right? We can't. We're trying to change the outer world. But of course, you can't put death off. You can put death off maybe, but, it's still our nature, birth and death. So yes, according to the Buddha's teaching, the suffering goes away. The state of Arhat, conqueror, but it's a very high state. And until then, we can use it. Yeah, Keen, grab him the mic.
My question is kind of like the flip side of that. Didn't some of our important teachers suffer more than we could ever know? Like, didn't Togme, who wrote the 37 Bodhisattvas, didn't he suffer from lice or something like that?
Actually, I think Gar Rinpoche himself, I think he has a lot of physical pain, like just old age arthritis and things like that. I mean, the fact that he was in that camp for 19 years, that has to have some, but you never see it manifest. So I don't really know. He may have told someone something like that once, again, as an instruction to show you, we're not limited. I remember once in my own very limited way, I was bitching and moaning to Lama Tarchin about basically life responsibilities and that kind of thing. And he just reached over and just patted me on the shoulder. It was like all I needed to realize I'm getting too far out there with my own drama. So yeah, I think some of these teachers have tremendous difficulties, sufferings, and all of that. And we don't see, for that matter, all these Tibetan teachers. It's so impressive to me when I have the blessing, really, of having a Tibetan son-in-law. When you hear the stories of what happened in Tibet, I mean, some of that we know, of course, but they're actual stories of going across the Himalayas barefoot and things like this. I mean, what they've been through. And those of us who have been to India, Keen, India is no picnic at all. And there they are. So what I'm saying is that instead of seeing just a tsunami of kvetching, I mean, think of it, it's amazing. You don't see any moaning, you don't see any complaining. And as you know these people, you realize that's not a phony thing. They're not maintaining some sort of, phony stance or effort. I mean, they have their sufferings, to be sure. But the way that they actually deal with it is so different than when I see, my father was born in the kitchen, on a kitchen table. That's in northern New Jersey in 1923. When you see how we have developed, and we're all walking around, I shouldn't say all of us, but you see the great unhappiness in our society. And you think, really? We're driving around in these big machines? I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, air conditioning. When I was a kid, Phoenix was just like a little town, really. I mean, it was a city, but it wasn't like it is now. The first time that I went out there to see Gar Rinpoche, coming into Phoenix was like endless, this metropolis. How do you do that without air conditioning? So we are living in this, one of the Kempo, I think it was Kempo Sewan Gyatso who was here. He was the main Kempo for Penno Rinpoche. And he was talking about, coming to America and how people, they were able to start their car remotely. They were able to turn on the heater in their car remotely. And then they had this suffering of going from the door through the cold garage into their heated car. This is not really suffering, he said. But no, he didn't say that. It is suffering. It is suffering. But my point here is the difficulties that these people have had and their response to it. It's tremendous teaching for us. Yeah.
The Dalai Lama has chronic migraines, so he would teach, right, for a couple of days, and then he'd get on a plane and fly to the next place to teach, and for a couple of days, and he'd do that for like 10 months in a row. He would never take any time off. And he had these chronic migraines. So you'd see him teaching with this wet cloth on top of his head
You're right.
while he's teaching.
Right. The other one I've seen Tibetans do is they wrap they have something that's particularly an ailment, physical bother. I can't remember what it is, but they wrap just like a blanket around their midsection. I don't know what that's supposed to do, but yeah, the cloth on the head, Dalai Lama in that way too. I've noticed this, say with Garden Rinpoche too, is when they're going around doing these teachings when they're on a tour. And, they come and you do this tour and then they leave and everybody here is exhausted. And then you see a video of them coming to the next place, the same crowd, hi, how are you? The whole thing starting over and over and over. They don't get any rest. I've never figured out how, like jet lag, like I'm a wreck. I fly from here to Chicago and I'm feeling it. If I fly to Arizona, it's like, and then a slight change in altitude, it's like, I need honey water or something and an attendant. It's like such a wimp. Yeah, you're right. But then you see, like Garden Rinpoche, he seems impervious to that. And yeah, that's a wonderful story, Roberta. Thank you about the Dalai Lama. Because I've seen that with the wet cloth on the head, and I didn't realize what what it was for. Wow.
Your migraines.
Yeah, well, mine went away for some reason. Okay, so continuing and nothing. All right, but again, this point that the direct parallel between the three natural states of our existence, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya, just levels of manifestation. You can think of the Dharmakaya as being pure potential, and yet it's so pure you can't see anything there. And then out of that coming these tremendous, this bodies of bliss, they're called, and they're so useful in the meditations. And like the Dalai Lama has said, this is like these big, beautiful cumulus clouds. So they have form, but we can't grab onto them. They seem to be a foot in both worlds, formless and form. They're vast. Their immediate existence shows, it emphasizes the vastness of the space in which they are. And so they are space. And also I should have said about the Dharmakaya that it's blue. The sky is blue. So it has quality. It's not just that it's inert. This is the tremendous potential. And then raindrops come from the cumulus clouds. And this is the Nirmanakaya. This is something we can relate to. Water we can drink, we can bathe, we can benefit from it. Okay. One more paragraph for tonight. Now, since actualization of these three dimensions can be effected through the transformation of the three ordinary states of our existence. So again, because it's in our nature, we can take these gross forms, because they're just differences in grossness, you might say. They're not different in nature. Therefore, we can use these. It's like reverse engineering. We find an array of practices which contain specific meditative techniques focusing on those attributes which the three ordinary states of existence, and again, that's death, the bardo, the intermediate state, and rebirth. Focusing on those attributes which the three ordinary states of existence and the three Buddha bodies, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya, have in common. Through these practices, a continuity is developed between the ground or the base, the ordinary state, the path, and the fruition, the Buddha bodies. So again, the ground, the base is our ordinary state, there's the path, and then there's the result, the fruition, which are the Buddha bodies. In order to highlight the potential for liberation which exists in the skillful transformation of the ordinary states of existence, the great Indian Buddhist master Nagarjuna used the term kaya, body, even when describing the three ordinary states. Thus, the dimension, the kaya, of the moment of death is equated with the basic Dharmakaya. The dimension, the kaya, of the intermediate state is associated with the basic Sambhogakaya, and the dimension, kaya, of the rebirth process with the basic Nirmanakaya. Thus it is said that through the meditative ability of an accomplished yogin, a genuine assimilation takes place at the actual moment of death, or upon entering the intermediate state, and upon beginning the process of rebirth. All right, so he has a footnote here too, and let's just look at that. These relationships are vividly expressed. Chapter 11 of this text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Great Liberation and Hearing, where specific instructions are given for recognizing the spiritual opportunities that occur at the moment of death, that occur during the intermediate state of reality, and that occur in the process of rebirth as experienced. Here the instructions speak of recognition, which assimilates the moment of death with the Buddha body of reality, the Dharmakaya, and as he said already, the intermediate state of reality with the Buddha body of perfect resource, Sambhogakaya, and the intermediate state of rebirth with the Buddha body of emanation. So we'll stop there for one more little tiny one-sentence paragraph, it looks like. With respect to training in these practices, a similitude of such an assimilation can be effected during the waking state through generation stage practices, and during sleep through dream yoga practices. Okay, so that's getting right to what we're talking about now. So there are this similarities, you might say, these basic essences. Nature is the same of these, totally developed states of the Buddha, and then our own waking state. And so this generation stage where we're generating ourselves as a Buddha, creating the creation stage, it's called too. We can sort of use this, and then during the waking state, and then during sleep, through dream yoga, which of course is one of the 6 yogas in Naropa too. Okay, let's stop there. Any further questions right now? This is very heady stuff, but it's so important to have some understanding of it, because it gives you confidence in these what otherwise seem wildly esoteric practices. But you see what's going on here. It's an immediate recognition of your complete internal sanity and the skillfulness of it. Because otherwise it seems like very, very kind of like sort of hard to believe. And people even seeing maybe there's no meditation happening. But he'll get into that. This is all based on basic Buddhist practice, but it's just kind of manifesting in a different way energetically. So just to touch on it a little bit, when you're first taught meditation, basic calming the mind meditation, shamatha, shinne, we take an object, we concentrate on it, we're working to our one-pointed focus to sort of ignore and get beyond, you might say, our ordinary distractions. We're making the mind into a useful thing, kind of like a lens, taking all these various rays of the sun. You can focus it into one spot, you can start a fire. That spark of fire is wisdom. That's what we're trying to do. So in the generation stage, the concentration that we're doing in this concentrating on feeling our pride of being a Buddha, and then concentrating on trying to actually create, to visualize all the different aspects, the clarity of it, and then the meaning, concentrating on the meaning. What is the meaning of these symbols and symbolism, these different aspects? So it's like seeming like a lot of things going on, but there's still this concentration on a sacred object. So it's very, very complete, and that's why they say that the practice is faster. But we'll say more about that at another time. But basically, the concentration aspect is us generating ourselves as a Buddha, and then the vipassana, the insight aspect, is the vividness of this, whether visual or even not visual, but the vividness of the experience. So there'll be more, but this is just the start. He's starting to touch on the highest yoga tantra kind of mind-boggling. Okay. Any other questions? Is he okay out there? Dave's with him? Yeah, that's good. That's good. He's kind of confused. We have a visitor Zoomers. The church has an AA in the basement. I don't know if it's happening today, but one of the AA guys show up, and sometimes they're a little befuddled. He's up here with us, keeping warm. But sadly, we didn't have any coffee tonight. Okay, let's do the dedication, if we can. Through the power of the virtues accumulated by reading and discussing this book, may all sufferings quickly cease, may all happiness and joy be fulfilled, and may the holy Dharma flourish forevermore. May every last one be free. Svaha. Okay, thank you all. This is heady stuff, not easy stuff. And listening to me read